So let's be honest here. It really hasn't been going well for the Brexiteers so far. As for the first thing, as we talked about last week, the Leave coalition that was built of all these different groups, all wanting different things, and the Leave campaign started to promise everything to everyone. And as we always said, sooner or later, the Leave campaign, the Leavers, and the Brexiteers have to deliver on what they promised. And so far, that ain't doing it. One of the big promises that we are seeing actively at the moment being broken was that the Brexiteers built this entire project and have been complaining. Well, one of the many things they've been complaining about for years is the amount of red tape. Oh, all this red tape. Oh, it's terrible. We'll get rid of it. Well, now we've left. Turns out that was wrong, because if you were listening to James O'Brien, was it yesterday? I think it was. Or it might have been last week. There was a guy who was a fisherman came on, and he was like, "We've had to do all this extra paperwork, all this extra stuff. The systems aren't matching, aren't lining up. The customs officials who have been 6 months on the job don't know what they're doing. You know, the ports and other people are trying to help out, but they can't because the system itself isn't helping out." And remember, we've got to try and get to sort all this problem out before March. And the thing is, a lot of this paperwork ain't going to go away. Even if the companies actually manage to start and handle this amount of paperwork they've got, it's still not going to go away. It's still going to be an extra cost to the businesses. And the ironic thing is that Brexit was built, or one of the things it was built on, was on getting rid of paperwork, that it would be somehow easier. We'd get rid of all this red tape. All they've done is just gone, here's all this mound of extra red tape you've got to now do. And ironically, one of the things that the guy said, you know, we'd been warning about this for so long, and yet if the Leave campaign had been honest about what was actually going to happen, or if they'd actually listened to the experts who had been warning them that this was going to happen, no one would have voted for it. And to be honest, that's true. We've warned that if you voted Leave back in the day, that you would be handing Britain over to a very far-right government. And turns out, some people, the penny's starting to drop. Now, we've always said sooner or later the penny will drop for a lot of these people. And the argument will become, we were better off in the EU. And it won't be long before you start to see that, because hopefully next week, the fishing industry might be going and dumping all their rotting fish at the doors of the politicians. And especially, I hope, the Brexiteers, and I hope that Nigel Farage gets a visit and hands a load of rotten fish all over his driveway, because quite frankly, he really deserves it. So, before we get into the article here, please remember to hit that like and share button, and of course down below there's a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link, and thank you very much for everyone who does support me that way. So, on with this. So, this one comes from The Guardian, and the title is, "Brexiteers are waking up to the damage that they've done." Brexit has beached the fishing boats at Hastings. The two-man crew of Paul Joy's boat, Kenya, have left for shore jobs after the price of the husk that they landed fell to just 2p a kilo. Exports to the European Union are Brexit blighted, with fisheries across Britain poleaxed by new costs and regulations. Their catches are rotting before they even reach the EU markets, and it's costing them millions already. For the past 2 years, Joy, a passionate Brexiteer, has constantly told me he believes his industry would be shafted in any trade deal. Betrayed, sacrificed, he says. Outraged at the government's failure to secure British fishing rights for 12 miles around the coast, and now crippled by the export costs. So when Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has the effrontery to tell BBC's Andrew Marr that this is a great deal for the fishing industries, he must know it's not true. Other industries want to know if Boris Johnson's promise for compensation for fishing losses means a huge subsidy and penury for this less than a 0.2% sliver of the economy, because the problems exploding in one industry after another in less than 3 Brexit weeks are not going away. The friction is the new normal, as chief EU negotiator Michel Barnier firmly said last week. Things have changed, and changed for good. UK choices mean mathematical, obvious, inevitable consequences when you leave the single market. That's what the British wish to do. It's not French revenge or bloody-minded Brussels, but ordinary life as a third country, which we've been telling you for ages that this was going to happen. So it's shocking when the Brexiteers suddenly dawn and realise, why is all this happening? No, we've been telling you these are the problems that are going to happen for years. And oh look, they've happened. So the plight of the fisheries is just a valid emblem of the great blow that is falling upon exports and parts of the economy. Michael Gove's December warnings of bumpy moments upped an octave in the first week of this year. To Britain should prepare for significant border disruption. That well-staged last-minute deal melodrama was designed to end Brexit stories, regulating all the boring details of the aftermath to the business pages. Not so. The stories are so strong, even the ardent Brexit-creating press can't resist them. Though now those newspapers add a self-explanatory slant that blames the government for a bad Brexit. Here are just some of the random discoveries since Brexit Day. The Sun warns of Brexit's threat to the Cheltenham Festival. The last 180 years Irish ran horse race, but this year Brexit leaves Irish horse racers trainers fearing a colossal tax bill. Likewise, the cost of taking UK show jumping horses across the Channel is prohibited for their British owners. Motorsports face similar fees for cars shipped to EU racers. The fashion industry, especially ASOS, type cheap end with small margins, is hitting new rules of origins crisis, paying new duties on many of its products manufactured outside of the EU. Fun stories in the Sun include the lorry driver crossing the Gibraltar-Spain border whose bottles of Nando's sauce is confiscated, all along with those ham sandwiches snatched by the Dutch. The Daily Telegraph reports that the flight from Europeans from England, but not from Remain voting Scotland and Northern Ireland. And Farmers Weekly sends up flares about plummeting meat prices due to delayed exports. All these losses for a host of smaller industries soon mount up fast. But look at the Sunday Times report on the crisis in the car industry that's worth 42 billion in exports and employing 183,000 people, where the car parts delays are halting production at some factories. Yet, still, most economically deadly is the unseen slipping away of invisibles. Where the 80% of the economy is in services is already leaking tax revenues. Bloomberg keeps its grim recording of no likely progress. The City of London plight laid bare as a Brexit deal hopes fade, it reports. And there is still the unfolding Northern Ireland disaster. St Leon Ferries diverted its Great Britain Northern Ireland sea crossing to the road skier to Cherbourg instead. The Time headlines read, "Doldrums ahead in shipping forecast as Brexit complicates customs." Over the past year, I've been following the impending haulage disaster through Manfreight, a 200-lorry company in Coleraine. Its owner, Chris Slowly, says no, The crisis in GB/UK crossing is not down to teething problems, as Rab put it. It is baked into the very nature of Brexit. His lorries carrying exports to England return empty, doubling his costs as English exporters find it too costly to sell to Northern Ireland. And that's permanent. The Telegraph reports that 1 in 10 lorries are being turned back at the EU border. Delays will continue. Spot checks at EU borders are standard. So, lorry queues, lorry parks, and other roadside squalors will increase. The pandemic has worsened the Brexit effect, but there was a good reason to extend. The transition period, and it is only human to confess to some Remainer, "I told you so," with glee when ex-MP Katie Howe warns in the Telegraph, "The Tories have betrayed Northern Ireland with their Brexit deal. What on earth did she expect? That's why Northern Ireland wisely voted to remain." Expect a lot more shocked Brexiteers to discover what they have done. The Brexit cabinet itself is on a steep learning curve, and just here's one example. In the Telegraph, "We Brexiteers are being blamed for the problems we warned about. In reality, the faults lie squarely with the government, the poor planning on the shouted." And it's just like, you've just got to read that comment again. "We Brexiteers are being blamed for the problems we warned about. In reality, the fault lies squarely with the government and poor planning." No, the fault lies with the Brexiteers, who lied and consistently said these would not be problems, that these wouldn't be issues. So, good that the Brexiteers are getting blamed, and we can't let them squirm out of it, because they deserve all the blame that they have, because this is their mess, along with the government, the Tory government, the Brexiteer government that they put in place. And it's just, it continues. Oh, the Schadenfreude. That's a sharp U-turn from the Telegraph, too eager to report on the 1st of January from Dover, chaos. What chaos? As Brexiteers turn on each other, Brexit politics moves fast. Until now, the Tories planned to move on, reviving the Brexit done triumphalism to re-arouse the captured red walls at the election, and Labour just wanted to bury the whole issue. But the scale of eruptions blasting out into one sector after another requires the opposition to find its footing on this tricky terrain. Many, like Paul Joy on Hastings Beach, are passionately pro-Brexit as ever, and fearlessly, Labour needs to regain its voice of outrage that Brexit leaders deliberately shut their ears to what leaving the single market and the customs union really meant. A better Brexit deal really was possible. And there you have it. And we're going to go back to this whole thing, because ultimately, at the end of the day, when people see the disaster that is really Brexit, that this is now the new normal, people are going to realise that we were better off inside the EU. And it's not going to take that much of a nudge. And yes, there will always be passionately pro-Brexit people around, I'm sure, who will always say, "Oh no, they didn't get it right. You just don't understand. They just didn't do it right." That'll be their argument, I'm sure, going forward, of, "Oh, only if they'd listened to us and done it the right way." Well, according to you, what we're doing now, Brexiting, is the right way. You were all for it just a couple of months ago, and now all of a sudden, this isn't the right way. And once again, as we've said before, the Brexiteers enter a permanent victimhood status. Always the betrayed, never the betrayers. So, as always, thanks for watching. Please do remember to hit that like and share button on your way out. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And thank you very much to the people who do support me that way. So, as always, see you all next time.